one of the things that's wild about you, man, is that you're like hyper smart and commercial, but you also have a lot of heart. I mean, you do a lot of
Thank you.
things because you know that they're the right thing to do. Certainly, your work in mobile voting, which I freaking love,
Yeah.
is just because you think it's going to be better for the future.
I don't see a world. So if you get back to a couple of things that we've been saying, right? So the thing I learned in all of my time in politics, and I did city government, state government, federal government, executive branch, legislative branch. I'm a lawyer. Like I've seen this from pretty much every angle.
Yeah.
It's that while there are exceptions, you would be one if you were in office. Mike Bloomberg was certainly one. Policy outputs result from political inputs, right? And so if you want to make things better, it has to be in the interest of that politician to do so. And then when we did Uber, the same people who don't know who their state senator is, they never vote in a city council primary, were taking the time to advocate for us because A, it was something they cared about, and B, we made it really easy, right? You could do it right from the app. And so when that happened, we're thinking like, holy shit, if people could vote this way, maybe turnout would be a lot higher. And then over the succeeding years, cloud and blockchain technology both got better and better. And so in 2018, I started funding elections in different states where either deployed military or people with disabilities were voting in real elections on their phone. We did 7 states, 21 jurisdictions. They were all audited by National Cybersecurity Center, all came back clean. Turnout on average doubled. City of Denver did a poll of the people who participated. 100%, not surprisingly, said they prefer it because, to your point before about like getting a prescription, online as opposed to having to go somewhere. But the cybersecurity community, especially the people who are just obsessed with paper ballots, I'm sure you've come across them.
Well, I mean, this is the disingenuousness, man. It's like you say, hey, why don't we vote over the internet on our mobile phones and be like, oh, it's not secure. And you can show them 20, 20 things being like it's perfectly secure, demos and the rest of it. But the truth is they just don't want us to be able to vote that way.
No, they don't want more turnout. Yeah, I mean, they like things the way they are. If turnout gets too high, there's the mobile voting book that I mentioned that I just wrote. One of the chapters opens with, do you know who Abner Mikva was?
No, I don't.
So Abner Mikva was a federal judge. He was Clinton's White House counsel. I took his class in law school at the University of Chicago. And sort of this just famous sort of Chicago legend. And in like 1948 or whatever it was, he's a young man. And he walks into the Adlai Stevenson for president office in Chicago and says, I'd like to volunteer. And like a ward boss, I think it was Tim O'Sullivan, sort of takes a hit off a cigar and says, well, who sent you? And he said, nobody. And so Sullivan said, we don't want nobody that nobody sent. And I think Mick actually named one of his books that. But that's still the reality today, right? Which is they don't want, the reason they do gerrymandering, the reason they schedule elections in dates that are hard to vote out of, that restrict access, is they want to control the electorate. And they especially don't want Gen Z and Gen Alpha when they come of age voting, because they're going to be held accountable for all kinds of problems that they've let fester and let get out of control. And so I think that the bad news about politicians is they'll do whatever they have to do to stay in office. The good news is they'll do whatever they have to do to stay in office. So when turnout is 12%, let's say you're a Republican congressman from Florida, and turnout's 12% in your primary, half of those voters are NRA members, you know intellectually that it's crazy that someone can walk into a store and walk out with an AK-47. But you also know that should you ever say that, you're done. There's a congressman from upstate New York in the Buffalo area named Chris Jacobs, who's a Republican, super Trumper, but there was, if you might remember, there's a mass shooting in a supermarket in Buffalo. And he sort of said, we need to look at some of these laws. He was really shaken by it. They immediately stripped the line from him, so he couldn't run in the next election.
Yeah, it's terrible.
And his career ended. Or take, a New York Tech example. Amazon did this headquarter competition, HQ2, which is I kind of stole a little bit of that strategy in the novel.
Yeah.
And they picked New York, which was great. And they picked Long Island City, which is a district that you got to know. And the polling showed that a majority of the district wanted it, a majority of the city wanted it.
Yep.
But turnout in that primary is typically like 14%. A guy named Mike Gianaris, who's a very smart politician, but a politician through and through, understood that 14% hated Amazon, hated Jeff Bezos, hated tech, hated big business, and that he would be punished politically if he let the deal go through. And so he's the guy that led the fight. I mean, AOC did this too, but really Gianaris did it on a state level. He's the guy that led the fight to kill the bill. He picked one job, his own, over 40,000 jobs. Yeah. Why? Because those 14% would be,
highly ideological,
upset, right?
Yeah.
But now let's just sort of say people can vote on their phones and turn out in that Republican primary and Gianaris' primary both 36%. So still like a third. just based on the math, and based on the polling, the Republican would have to be for an assault weapons ban because that's what the majority of his voters would want.
Yes.
Daenerys would have to be for the Amazon headquarters. That's the majority of his voters would want. And so if we want things to get done, we have to sort of get more and more people voting. And the only election that really matters is the primary because of gerrymandering. And the only way I think to increase primary turnout at scale is to let people do it securely on their phones.
Hey YouTube, glad you're enjoying the podcast. If you really like it, hit subscribe, and then YouTube will notify you every time we have a bang up new guest. Thank you.